turn your hardware asset chaos into bottom line impact. First and foremost, I want to thank you for all being here. We're very excited to launch our latest offering, HAMx. Our two speakers on today's call have played a significant role in creating this offering. Josh Bernson, our Chief Technical Officer and the owner of this offering, and Yvette Mathews, our asset management expert and VP of Professional Services. My name is Paul Dixon. I lead sales, and I'm here to welcome you to the review of HAMx.
Thanks for that great intro, Paul. Let's talk a little bit about IT asset management. As we know, IT asset management can be a little chaotic sometimes, depending on where we are in our life cycle. ITS is staffed by a bunch of practitioners. We're people who were asset managers in our previous lives, not just consultants. So we've lived in your shoes. We absolutely understand what you're feeling, which is why we built HAMx. We wanted to fix these issues for you. So one of the things that we know is critically important is around cost. We want to reduce our costs overall as asset managers. And if I don't have visibility into my hardware assets, that's just going to drive up costs because I'm going to continually buy more equipment. Not really something we want to be held accountable for in the future. So if you guys have done a refresh recently and you've bought machines you probably didn't need to buy because you couldn't find the originals that you were supposed to replace, you'll know where I'm going with that one. When we talk about compliance and our lack of having a accurate CMDB or asset repository, that means I can't do any real-time reporting, which means to decrease confidence from the people we're sharing our audit and compliance reports with. Think about your IT security team. How many times have they asked you for information around assets? Assuming that you probably have that info. In some cases you may not. Not knowing our asset position leaves us vulnerable to cyber threats. Not knowing where our equipment is, who's using it, where it's located, or even something as simple as does it still exist or has it been stolen? That can potentially expose our data as the owners of said data to the world. We don't want to do that as asset managers. And lastly, it's how much time do we really want to spend managing our hardware? Meaning, if we have a good, stable repository of our asset data that we're following processes with, we shouldn't have to spend a lot of time chasing down those hardware assets. That frees us up to do things that are significantly more valuable to the organization.
Hey, thanks, Yvette, for the quick review on HAMx. You know, with regards to HAMx, we have built this with you in mind. This is a package to help kickstart your HAM program so we can help you remove your chaos. A couple other things I want you to think about throughout the program is we have built this alongside ServiceNow to help augment their new HAM application as well. You know, Josh and Yvette, from your perspective, what is the biggest challenge when kicking off an asset management program project?
Well, Paul, when I think of it from my perspective as an asset manager, it was honestly knowing where to start. It's such a large enterprise to take on as an asset manager. Do I focus on my processes? Do I focus on the tool I want to use? Do I focus on configuring things? Do I focus on integrations? Who are my stakeholders? How should I do this? It can get very overwhelming for someone who really is just interested in managing the data, the physical, financial, and contractual information around those assets, which is why I think the biggest issue that we have is knowing where to start.
Well, that's great insight, Yvette. And maybe Josh, Yvette, you can talk about this as, well, what have we done to eliminate or alleviate that problem with HAMx?
Sure. So let me jump in here. We built a new program to implement HAM in your organization. And the first thing we thought about was, how do we not introduce more chaos into hardware asset management? We did so by doing something called a prescriptive offering. Now, what that really means is that we wanted to define what success was up front. And we wanted to take all of the objectives, all of the tasks in kicking off hardware asset management that were necessary to build success and make sure we did those. And all of the other objectives, all of those other nice to have things that get us off track very quickly and make sure we don't try to get those in. So really what we're doing is we're taking a look at all the work we've done over many years of implementing hardware asset management and pulling in the most important things so that we can start off correctly. And the success we get out of that is we have a very efficient hardware asset management program. We're not introducing any new chaos into the project. And everybody gets to start off with a clean, efficient implementation of hardware asset management.
So Josh, let me ask you this then. How do we meet a wide variety of organizational goals?
So that's a great question. One of the challenges with a prescriptive offering is it can often feel like it's so self-contained that it doesn't really fit everybody. And we took that into account. In fact, it was a really important part of building HAMx. What we did is we sat down and we took a look at, well, where do we really need to start? And how do we make sure we can start at different points depending on the needs of the organization? So for example, if an organization's goals are to focus on reduced unplanned spending, so the asset manager is really focused on the cost controls, then perhaps a baseline hardware asset management program is exactly what we need. On the other hand, there might be an asset management team that's working very closely with the security team, focused end to end on getting the disposal and end of life asset tracking in place to reduce risk. Well, we built a program that works in that mode as well, or very closely aligned to IT and making sure that we understand the entire life cycle. That's another program. All of those are built to work in the same model where we know the success criteria, but we built a starting point specific to each organization.
Well, that sounds great, Josh, but let's dig into the details. Can you provide, what kind of features you're actually talking about would be included?
Sure, let's take a look at those. So we have those set of outcomes that all of those individual items that lead to our success criteria for each of these 4 modules, if you want to call it that. So we have under baseline, we focus very closely on the front end of asset management. So request and receive, and all of the data and processes that go in line with that. Refresh, where our asset managers are tied closely to IT, we're looking, in addition to request and receive, we're also looking at the refresh process and our install, move, add, change, basically understanding the life cycle of our assets inside of our organization. If we're looking at security or secure, we care a lot more about the end of life of our devices. How do we dispose of devices? How do we make sure we track that end of life so we don't lose control of the devices at the end? And we have some organizations that need everything, that need all of these processes together and are ready to take on that extra load. And so we have a module ready for that as well.
Well, this sounds great, but I think everyone's asking the question, how did we come up with this?
Funny you should ask that, Paul, because it's one of the things that we talked about pretty much from the get-go is why would we want to do something like this? And when we looked at it, we said, well, we're a team of people who do this for a living. And prior to being consultants, this was our day job. What would we want to see from an offering like this? How would we want this to be configured so that we could make it easily consumable within our own organizations? So we looked at, from our perspective, the number of successful implementations, how our customers felt about how we did when we implemented HAM for them. What were some of the goals that we were trying to accomplish? Could we get an increased return on investment very quickly, which we determined that we could do with this offering? We could decrease the cost, and overall our risk and compliance positions were going to be vastly better once we were done doing something like this. So that's why ITS decided that they wanted to build something like this. Overall, it's our area of expertise, and it's really our favorite thing to do. Josh, what can you tell us about ITS for people who may not know us?
Sure. So at ITS, we are a ServiceNow Elite partner. We're very proud of that partnership with ServiceNow. We work closely with ServiceNow to develop HAMx in conjunction with their hardware asset management application. We're also an ITAM Forum patron, and we rely on ITAM Forum for best practices and insight to build this and all of our IT asset management work. In addition to that, we have a large group of ITAM implementers for ITAM certified and HAM certified implementers with a lot of experience. And finally, we have some additional alliances, specifically with ARMIS and with Jamf, that allow us to extend our reach outside of the ServiceNow asset management space when we need to get a little bit more data and have a little bit more control over the environment.
Well, I certainly hope we've given you all something to consider regarding HAMx today. I'd like to personally thank Josh and Yvette for sharing their insight. We recognize ham might not be for everybody, but here are a few questions you really should ask yourself to see if HAMx is right for you. If you want to learn more, please go to www.itsdelivers.com/HAMx. This webinar is one of many introducing our HAMx offering, so be on the lookout for more webinars in the upcoming weeks, including our demo instance.